So I'd say that Sonic Spitball was a success. The response to the series completely demolished my expectations. I'm really happy about that, thank you. My favourite responses that I got were on part 3 with people saying that they actually wanted to play that game. Now, I'd convinced myself that the video would have no appeal outside of the rhetoric, so those comments were a really welcome surprise. And with Sonic fan games' recent surge in popularity brought about by the likes of Sonic after a sequel, the hiring of Taxman, Stealth and T. Lopez to work in Sonic Mania, and even a Sonic fan game being played in Game Grumps, it's really great to see this kind of passion project gaining recognition. Hang on a minute, doesn't that look familiar? The crescendo of the enthusiasm for me was finding Green Hill Paradise Act 2, which uses mechanics that might seem familiar to you if you've seen Sonic Spitball. The game is a sequel to the 2012 version of Green Hill Paradise, which was a fan game that aimed to bring the looser, physics-based gameplay of the classic Sonic games into 3D. Act 2 attempts to accomplish much the same thing and boasts such innovations as Boost Mode, which the game calls Max State, a momentum-based homing attack, a turn circle that adjusts Sonic's speed depending on how much you turn, reduced control in a ball, and even signs that instruct a player on proper procedure after they fail. The creator of the game, Supersonic68, cites Sonic Spitball as an inspiration, which is really humbling, but I have to stress I didn't have anything to do with this project, I didn't do any of the work on it. Full credit goes to Supersonic68 and his team for, actually making a proof of concept rather than just describing a game to you using words. While I'm stressing things, I also want to stress that Green Hill Paradise Act 2 is by no means a carbon copy of Sonic Spitball. Nevertheless, due to their similarities, I think that the game's worth looking at on this channel. I also want to note that I can't really promise an unbiased review. The thread of logic that I follow to reach my conclusion here is tightly knotted with my experience making Sonic Spitball. And I think it would compromise my integrity, so to speak, if I didn't first note the bias in this case. The game has a lot of negatives that I'd like to address first, as they're more self-evident but less interesting as a result. They're more or less inconsequential to what I took away from the game. Now to start, I don't really want to criticise the glitches and technical issues as they kind of come with the territory, and also it's a fan game. I got him. Fans working in their spare time on a passion project simply aren't going to have the time or resources to produce something with the same level of polish as a professional company, so I think it'd be pretty fruitless to focus on the glitches beyond noting that they do indeed exist. I do have grievances with some of the actual design though. For starters, the controls overlap awkwardly in a lot of places. Sonic seems to be based on his Unleashed physics, so he's pretty sticky, feeling like he's running through tar when he's taking off. Now, credit where it's due, he never feels as much like a car as he did on Unleashed thanks to the clever use of his turn circle. Like in Adventure, he'll keep momentum on wider turns, meaning that he can still make tight turns and doesn't need 3 triggers to do it. No, I draw comparisons with Unleashed largely because of his jump, where his turn circle is practically non-existent. It feels really natural for those long leaps when you have a lot of speed, but it's ill-equipped to deal with precision. Sonic is also unable to turn when in a ball, which really limits its usefulness. You can uncurl by tapping the button again, so it's not a problem, but it means that rolling is pretty much only useful in downward slopes when you want to hit max state. Max State itself functions like boost mode, but also allows the player to destroy enemies by running into them. This further marginalises rolling, it's not an effective attack option at any speed. Now, as for a homing attack, the small addition of making Sonic carry on after using it instantly makes it a lot more satisfying to use, but the fact that you have to jump beforehand, again, limits its usefulness. You move really quickly in max state, so you don't want to be killing your speed by jumping to use the homing attack. And finally, the camera's refreshingly hands-off, but it doesn't turn to follow Sonic if you're moving at speed, making it a bit awkward. I also have a few complaints with the level design. It's a big sprawling map, excessively so. There's as much scope for confusion as there is for exploration. There's little thrust or direction to the level by design, so it's easy to find yourself going in circles. There are also a number of claustrophobic areas that are completely at odds with Sonic's loose controls. You have to be really precise to hit some of these ramps, and I think they could be made a bit larger to account for Sonic's high speed. One section, for example, sees Sonic launch upside down off a half-completed loop, whereupon the player can follow one of two directions, but it's simply too squashed to give the player time to react. They have to prepare by pushing right in the loop, and then suddenly jerking left as the perspective changes. It's just too ambitious a sequence for the engine and the perspective. I think that loops and corkscrews could be enlarged in general. They work better both visually and mechanically when they're bigger. Some edges wouldn't really go amiss either to stop you accidentally sliding off with the shifting perspective. Speaking of corkscrews, sometimes the terrain isn't built to accommodate them. There are at least two that I can think of that have no opportunity to build speed beforehand. Half-pipes are also a problem. They're low cut, so you have to manoeuvre yourself back onto the half-pipe at exactly the right spot to gain back all your momentum, which isn't very free or exhilarating, it's fiddly and precise. And finally, the enemies are often clustered up, so if you have speed, you'll simply bypass the enemies rather than stop to deal with them. And if you don't have speed, the momentum-based homing attack often sends Sonic past the next enemy in sequence, making them difficult to chain. Additionally, Orbinauts are a poor enemy choice for a game that lacks the insta-shield, as you have to wait around for them to become vulnerable, not an appealing prospect when you're usually trying to build speed. So, as a game, Green Hill Paradise leaves a lot to be desired. But nevertheless, I like it, and that's because it's a stunning proof of concept. You see, if you're just trying to play this as a Sonic level, it doesn't really work. There's simply not enough of a structure to be led through. But if you're just trying to muck about in it to see what Sonic can do, it's incredibly fun. You can decide that you want to go somewhere and then take off at top speed towards it. This isn't like Sonic Unleashed, where you bolt through incredible looking sequences that you can't interact with. Here, if you see something, you can go and play with it. More selfishly, it also vindicated a number of design choices in Spitball 3 for me. What I didn't appreciate about boost mode in my video is that it allows the game to seamlessly blend classic and modern sensibilities. It combines classic Sonic's terrain and physics-based platforming with modern Sonic's more forward-facing linear platforming, but rather than rely on the boost to do so, it relies on the player's ability to keep the rhythm going. So you can either muck about with the physics, or you can blast through the level, and most importantly, neither feels like an illegitimate way to play. It's a very seamless hybrid of two gameplay styles, both of which grow from the same stem rather than feeling like two games stapled together. So you have the methodical platforming of classic Sonic that makes for satisfying gameplay, complemented by the high-speed thrills of modern Sonic that make for an exciting spectacle. The sprawling open world isn't very considered, which is to a fault as I discussed earlier, but it's also a major benefit as it's left up to the player to parse it. You decide what you want to do at any given moment. The game also reintroduces the elemental barriers, and after playing this I've decided that they really should just be a staple of the series. They do so much for the game even when you don't have them, because you want to explore to find them, and once you've found them, they help you explore further. It's perfect. And the game incentivizes exploration through the 7 Chaos Emeralds. And come on, let's not beat around the bush here. If you're watching this video, you know what the Chaos Emeralds do. But there's yet another secret on top that's just pure molten fan service, and it's bloody difficult to find as well. Now, I won't give you any examples so as not to spoil it, but this never feels cheap. Finding these goodies requires the player to experiment with the core mechanics. It never feels like the game is subverting its own rules. So in short, you have a lot of scope for creativity in how you approach the level, and also a lot of reasons to be creative. That is the freedom that Sonic's specific brand of platforming has. That is the major appeal of the series' style. And while Green Hill Paradise is riddled with shortcomings, for me it's never ruined by them because it manages to capture that appeal. I think that Green Hill Paradise shows the potential for compromise. It shows that classic design principles could be brought into 3D without excluding the appeal of the later games. The biggest thing that I took away from it though was vindication. It really has substantiated a lot of Spitball 3's design to me. The big problem with that video was that it was a design document. There was no game to be played there, so there was no tangible evidence that it really could work. And after having played Green Hill Paradise, I reckon it probably would. Now, it's not exactly how I would have done it, but then if you want to see exactly how I would have done it, you can just go and watch Spitball 3. The fact is, it never needed to be a carbon copy of Spitball 3. My point with that video was that Sega should be thinking their design through on its own terms. And while I don't think that Green Hill Paradise accomplishes that perfectly, I think that it's a bloody good proof of concept and well worth trying out if you're a Sonic fan. Now, with all that said, I am officially sick to death of Sonic the Hedgehog. Thanks for indulging me in this detour. I promise that I'll be talking about something else next time. Cheers!